Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. So today's video is one of my favorite videos to film every year, and it is the mid-year book freakout tag. So this is a video that's been going around BookTube for years now. Someone created it, I'll leave the creators down below, but it's a video that most of us like to do here on BookTube to just check in on our reading in the year for this mid-year point and all of the best and worst books that we've read. In previous years, I've been really bad about giving multiple books as answers for each question. So today I tried to narrow it down to just one book each question, and that makes for some slight differences in my answers. Like I may have used one book multiple times, but I tried to use different ones. So just keep that in mind when hearing my answers. All right, our first question is, what's the best book you've read so far in 2023? So this one hands down has to go to Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I haven't read a lot of books this year, but this is definitely the one that like hit me so hard. I also want to pick a book for this question that wasn't like so closely personally related to me because I've read a lot of like memoirs, but this is definitely the book out of the ones I've read this year that generally is just so amazing and is a fiction novel that I desperately loved. This is the story of a friendship that evolves over like 30 years, I think, and really is about the magic and the love of storytelling, and especially in the context of video games. You don't really need to have a sense of video games to love this book or enjoy it. I think the main like theme of this book is just like the friendship that evolves and sort of takes different turns and kind of veers into love and maybe not quite, and then also the like storytelling aspect. I love this book because it hits all the spots of like my favorite romances, the ones where these characters are so incredible on their own, but they're also super flawed and they're finding some sort of kindredness with each other, but the circumstances of life, of our world, don't let them be together, and it's just so freaking heartbreaking. So yeah, this book made me cry, it made me laugh, it made me happy, it made me sad, and I still think about these characters constantly and they live in my brain rent-free. Sadie, Sam, and Marks have my entire heart, and I can't imagine reading another book that is gonna hit me in the particular way that this book did. All right, our next question is, what's the best sequel you've read so far in 2023? So again, I haven't been reading much this year, but the only sequel I think that I picked up was actually Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, and I have to say guys, this was a freaking fantastic sequel and probably one of the best sequels I've read. One, because I was much more fresh with the world, so it was more enjoyable jumping into the sequel, but also because I think in this book the characters take more of a like ensemble cast vibe and they really do feel more like a found family, versus in the first book it's mainly focused on Alex Stern, our main character, and there's also so much more Darlington in this book, and I just loved seeing all of that, and also like the angstiness and the maybe romance between Alex and Darlington had me in the feels. So if you really love Ninth House, or if you were debating whether to pick up Hellbent, I highly recommend you do, because I think that generally for most people this one is probably the more enjoyable of the two. I think both are on par for me, but I really love the sequel. Alrighty, the next question is a new release that you haven't got to yet but you really want to. So funnily enough, I was trying to figure out a book for this question, and all of the new releases that I were thinking were new releases were actually books that came out in 2022. So my perception of time has just gone out the window. But this book is the winner of the Booker Prize for 2022, but I think it was only recently published in US and Canada, but don't quote me on that. So that book is The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida by Shehan Karunatikla. This book I'm so freaking excited for. One, because it's like a prize winner and I've heard really amazing things about it, but two, because it's actually set during the Sri Lankan Civil War. For those who don't know or don't know my background, I am Sri Lankan Tamil and my parents are from Sri Lanka. I was born in Canada, so it definitely like connects to my own heritage and like my life. But number two, the reason I'm really excited about this book is because it seems like it's gonna be right up my alley, because it's been described as a bawdy, wisecracking satire set amid the murderous mayhem of the Sri Lankan Civil War. The reason I find that like blurb of the book so interesting is because I found that literary satires are just my new favorite thing, and the, I don't know, subsection of literary fiction that I never knew I enjoyed so much. And so like I loved books like The Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang, I loved Disorientation, I loved Such a Fun Age, Little Fires Everywhere, so many great ones that sort of take this satirical bend to this very serious situation, and I think this is gonna be freaking fantastic. So if you've read this one, let me know what you thought of it. I know it's already a, you know, Booker Prize winner, so I'm pretty sure it's gonna be freaking fantastic, but I'm also intrigued because like the author is queer as well, and Sri Lankan. Really hyped to see how this one goes. And as far as I know, I think it takes perspective of a ghost, which is also a really interesting situation. Alrighty, before we get into the next question on this tag, I want to talk a little bit about the sponsor of today's video, which is Book of the Month. So you guys know I absolutely love Book of the Month. I've talked about them so many times before. They are a super popular, fast-growing online book service for readers. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors and help readers like you discover books you're gonna love. So instead of scrolling and looking for your next favorite read, you can just pick from one of their vetted selections each month and choose to get that in your blue Book of the Month box each month. A couple things I really love about Book of the Month is one, their skip policy, so you can skip any month if you ever don't like the selections that month. And then my other favorite thing about Book of the Month is just that it has really great prices for new release adult hardcover books. A lot of those books can be really expensive and, you know, have gotten increasingly more expensive over the years, but Book of the Month still has some of the best prices for them. So if you want to get your first Book of the Month box for only $9.99, you can do that with my code STORY and the link down below. There's a different price for Canada and a different code, so just check that down below. And of course, I have to share the books that I picked up for Book of the Month. So I grabbed Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is her newest book in the feminist romance novels. So I've already started this and I'm really enjoying it, so can't wait to see how it goes. And then I also picked up Chloe Gong's adult debut, which is Immortal Longing. I'm so excited for this. It's like an Antony and Cleopatra retelling, but in like space, I think, but really excited to check it out. So if either of those books seem interesting to you, then definitely go check out Book of the Month. Use my code STORY and grab your first box for only $9.99. All right, the next question is, what's your most anticipated book release for the second half of the year? So personally, I feel like with just the way my year has been going, I haven't really brushed up on what's coming up soon. So if you guys have any recommendations of books you think I would like that are coming out later this year, let me know down below. But the one that I can think of off the top of my head is by an author I love, and that book is Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I love Silvia Moreno Garcia. I've talked about her books so many times. Mexican Gothic, The Beautiful Ones, daughter of Dr. Moreau. Silver Nitrate is her newest novel, and I honestly don't even know anything about it. I think it has a little bit of a thriller aspect to it, but generally Silvia Moreno Garcia's books have a bit of a genre bending to them, so I just like going into them without knowing too much, and I'm usually very pleasantly surprised, so I'm excited to see how this one goes. Alrighty, the next question is the one that I feel like everyone always forwards right to because they want to hear the answer. It's the spiciest question of the tag, and that is, what was your biggest disappointment of a read for this year? So I'm answering this one very clearly on the basis of the word disappointment. This is by no means the worst book I've read this year. I've read worse books this year, but this is the one that disappointed me, I think, the most, because I went into it with one expectation and I think it gave me something a bit different than I wanted. That book is Happy Place by Emily Henry. You know, I never thought I'd be holding up an Emily Henry book for this question on this tag, but here we are. Again, like, disappointment really is bred out of a very high expectation, so I had very high expectations for this book, which is why I was disappointed. Had I been not as, you know, excited or expecting so much out of this, then I probably wouldn't be as disappointed. Regardless, Emily Henry is like one of my favorite romance authors. Book lovers, people we meet on vacation, beach read, all of them were fantastic. I gave them all 5 stars. Like, I really enjoyed them. But this one, I think I went into expecting and hoping to just get a fun, really cute, all-consuming romance that I could just like escape into. But what I got instead was one that felt a little too real and was just a little too, I don't know, deep and a little more distressing, I guess, for me personally, coming out of a breakup than I was hoping for. Essentially, this book follows 2 main characters who were dating for a very long time and break up, but haven't told their very close friends about the breakup. And so when they are forced to like go on this sort of cottage trip that they do yearly with their friends, they decide to just pretend that they're still together until the end of the trip and then break the news to their friends so that they don't ruin this last trip together. And I think for me, I just wasn't really enjoying the main characters and their personalities as much as I have enjoyed the characters from Emily Henry's previous books. And I just didn't really love the situation of like all this baggage and them kind of resolving it in this one book. Regardless, I don't think it's a bad romance or anything. I think it was still fun. I think if I had been reading this in a different moment in my life, I may have enjoyed it more, but given that I was like coming out of a breakup and looking for something just really cute and fun, but was being put back into this, you know, book that was talking about a breakup, wasn't really my vibe, and I just wanted something like new and fresh and fun. And, you know, that didn't have all the baggage. So here we are. Okay, the next question on the tag is, what was your biggest surprise of the year? So this one definitely has to go to Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. So this is another situation where I just had the wrong expectations of the book, and it really blew me out of the park after reading it. So this book I actually picked up for a video where I read a bunch of popular romance books, I think. But this book I kind of went into expecting it to be a very like classic romance and like only focused on the romance and not really have much more substance to it aside from that, just because of the way that the TikTok girlies were talking about it on the platform. I was kind of going into this wary, but this book had so much more dimension and like levels to it than I was expecting, and had so many interesting and incredible themes and such great and incredible main characters. And this is actually another situation of characters who break up or are divorced and then are kind of coming back together. And in this situation, I found it so much more convincing because they did so much work to get back to each other and were more in a position to be together again and realizing, you know, how much they couldn't live without each other. I will say, if you're planning to pick this one up, I would just check the content warnings for it because it's got a lot of heavy themes to it. And I didn't know that going into it, but I was fine. But if you know that you may get triggered by some things, I would just check the content warnings, because yeah, there's a lot that's covered in this book, but I think the romance in it was just so tender and beautiful, but also sexy and fun, and I loved every moment of it. Alrighty, the next question is one that I feel like I never answer in quite the right way, but the question is, what's your favorite new author? So this is either a debut author from this year or one that is new to you that you've read in 2023. For me, I'm gonna pick Carmen Maria Machado, the author of In the Dream House, and this is their memoir, and this is the only book of theirs that I've actually read, which is why I'm like, can I actually claim that this is a new favorite author for me when I've only read one of their books? But I do think that their writing in this book is what sold me. It's just so incredible, and I can't imagine any of their other works being any less astounding or just intricate and, you know, beautifully thought out, and just the way that they craft a sentence just blew me away. I like read it in a mad dash, you know, was listening to the audiobook for a few hours and just finished it all in one go, and was so captivated by their story. It's a story of abuse and a same-sex relationship, but there's just so many other aspects to the story and to the memoir that you learn along the way, and a lot of it has to do with different ways that we treat queer people in both the media and in our legal system. And it was just so fascinating, and I think I learned a lot, but I also was just feeling so much for our author and what they went through. Yeah, and it was just so incredibly written. One of the things that's so beautiful about the way this is written is that the author addresses their previous self in this, like, you know, horrible situation in this abusive relationship as you, so as if they're talking to themselves in the past. You missed readings parties, the supermoon, you tried to tell your story to people who didn't know how to listen. You made a fool of yourself in more ways than one. And I think the way that they had written it in the second person gives this more personal feeling to you when you are reading the book, and helps you put yourself in their shoes or just try to understand them and empathize with them a little bit more. So I loved every moment of it, and I cannot wait to read more of this author's works. Alrighty, the next question is, what's your newest fictional crush? So this is a question that I always have trouble narrowing down because I find that I generally just crush on characters all the time. Fictional people are always so much better than real people. The crush that I think I'm gonna go with is Montgomery from The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I do think that Sylvia Moreno Garcia has a way with like writing male love interests that I just personally love. I have generally liked the male love interests in all of her other books, but Montgomery is the one that takes the cake for me. And I think it's partly because he feels quite similar to other fictional crushes that I've had, and he has that general sense of like tortured, angsty hero who wants the best for the love interests that they're in love with, but knows that they can't be with them, and is trying to distance himself from them, but can't. And the whole internal battle and the struggle is just so fantastic, wonderful to see, love it so much. Funnily enough, the romance in this book is actually quite more one-sided toward Montgomery, and I think the way that he handles himself in the book is just so attractive, and it's just like the bare minimum, but he's not like, you know, forcing the situation, but he's still like angsty about it, and he's giving the other person time, and I loved that. So many beautiful chef's kiss lines from Montgomery that just showcase the angsty and romantic nature of his character. So yeah, he's definitely my newest fictional crush. If he was here in real life, would I date him? Who knows, but he is really just wonderful as a fictional character. Alrighty, on the flip side, the next question is, who is your newest favorite character? I did want to pick a character from a book that I haven't mentioned yet, so I thought I'd go with a couple characters in Another Now by Yanis Varoufakis. There were two characters in this book. One is more of a major character and one is like a very minor character that shows up for like 2 pages, but both of them just astounded me and were incredible, and like if they existed in real life, I would make them my idols. They are Iris and then Esmeralda. Esmeralda, who is a character that shows up for such a short time in the book. I just really enjoyed both those characters and just their values and views, and I think if they existed in real life, I would love to just like sit for a coffee with them and chat about this world and just their experiences, because I think they're just so fascinating. But I also think they're very quite different from me as well, so it would make for an interesting, you know, dinner table conversation. Alrighty, the next question is books that made you cry in 2023. I very often when answering this question just cite all of the like favorites from the year so far that have made me cry, because most often my favorite books are always ones that also make me cry, but I decided to go a little bit differently for this time. So although Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow made me cry uncontrollably, and although In the Dream House made me sob dramatically at the end, this book in particular hit me in so many different ways and was so very personal to me, which is why it made me cry. So that book is An Unquiet Mind by K. Redfield Jamison, a memoir of moods and madness. If you haven't watched my recent Q&A or life update video, highly recommend going and checking that out, because you'll understand why this book particularly hit me. This book is essentially a memoir from K. Redfield Jamison, who is a psychiatrist and a professor at Johns Hopkins. And in this book, she basically talks about her life and her struggle with bipolar disorder. And it was just a very eye-opening and like relatable book for me. And I saw so much of myself in this book, which was just really incredible. Had all the emotions like coming out of me, and I was crying uncontrollably, both while reading this book and like afterwards. And every time I think about it, like I kind of want to cry, but it's really quite an incredible book. And even if you don't have any sort of relatable personal connection to this book, I think it's a fascinating memoir, and one that really delves into like the everyday struggles of having a mental illness or mental disorder. It's so funny because typically like I'm talking about books that made me cry because like something happened to the characters, and I'm often talking about fiction, but this is like one of the first like memoirs that I've read that like have deeply hit me personally in a way that I've just sobbed. Alrighty, and on that very sad note, let's flip to the other side, and the next question is, what are some books that made you happy in 2023? So for this one, I definitely have to go with Dating Dr. Dil by Nisha Sharma. This one was definitely a ride and a surprise for me as well. I would also put this under like my biggest surprise of the year. One, because like I again was expecting it to not have as much substance as it ended up having, and two, I just really loved seeing like these two brown characters, South Asian characters like me, falling in love, having a good time, and seeing like a fun love story, and one that was also like kind of sexy too. So I really enjoyed the spicy scenes in this one, but also just the general romance. If you didn't know what this book is about, it's essentially a like fake dating romance between these two South Asian main leads. He's a doctor and she's a lawyer, I think. I honestly forget. But there's this element of both of them having this like timeline of needing to get engaged by a certain point, so they're kind of using each other, but then end up discovering that they really do like each other. Honestly, I feel like this book was just so really popular everywhere, but also kind of underrated in the sense that so many people were trash talking it for like specific reasons, when like overall the book was just really great. So I personally love this book so much, and it made me really happy while reading it. Like I had so much fun. I was laughing out loud, I was giggling, I was just so joyous while reading it, and I just lost myself in the story and was just so excited for these characters. Alrighty, the next question is, what was your favorite book to movie adaptation that you've seen this year? So I am gonna cheat for this one because one, I haven't seen very many book to movie adaptations, or any at all, I think, this year. Two, I'm gonna actually pick a TV show that I've seen instead of a movie. And then three, the TV show I'm picking actually wasn't directly an adaptation of a book, but it was actually adapted into a book after the show came out. The show that I'm talking about is Queen Charlotte, the Bridgerton spin-off that came out this year and absolutely took over my life. This is the like novelization of the show that they came out with, Shonda Rhimes and Julia Quinn, afterwards. This show was just so freaking amazing, and I did not expect to love it as much as I did. It just hit me in so many ways, and I think it had a lot more depth to it than the other two seasons of Bridgerton, which honestly made me love Queen Charlotte a lot more. Essentially, for those of you who aren't that familiar with Bridgerton, Queen Charlotte just takes the story of Queen Charlotte, who's like the queen in the show, when she's younger, and we're getting to see her fall in love with her husband, King George, and how, you know, she's struggling with things in the present timeline of Bridgerton. So it does flip between timelines, but I think the overall themes of the show and the depth to the characters was just so incredible. So yeah, overall, really freaking love the show, like my favorite thing ever. And I've been rewatching so many of the episodes over and over again, especially, you know, the best scene ever, I will stand with you between the heavens and the earth, I will tell you where you are, that whole part, amazing. Alrighty, and the final question on this list is, what are all the books that you need to read before the end of the year? So this is another one of the questions that I never know how to answer, because my answer is basically I need to read all of them. I want to read all of the ones that I have bought and not read, or all the ones that are on my TBR that I want to read, but but I narrowed it down to a couple that I know I really want to read before the end of the year because they're sequels to series that I've started and absolutely fell in love with. So the first of those two books is The Atlas Paradox by Albie Blake. This is the sequel to The Atlas Six, which is a book that I read last year or the year before and really, really loved. And then the other book that I really need to get to is The World We Make by N.K. Jemisin. Many of you were part of my book club that I used to run, which is the Reading Color Book Club, and we read The City We Became as one of our book club picks, which was the first book in the series, and I really, really loved that first book in many ways that I didn't expect because it just took me by surprise. It's a bit of a like urban fantasy, I would say contemporary fantasy, where several people in New York from different boroughs in the city are kind of made into these avatars and are forced to find a way to protect their city from this sort of evil that's encroaching on New York City, and in a bit of a sci-fi way. And the first book was just so incredible, had so many layers to it and such a diverse cast, and I honestly finished the book thinking that it could use a sequel or some sort of extension to the series, but I didn't know how that was gonna happen, and so I'm intrigued to find out how the author has decided to take things. I do think though that because I love the first one so much, I'm a little scared to see how this one is gonna pan out, but if you have read The World We Make or The Atlas Paradox, let me know what you thought of them. Alrighty, and with that said, that is the last question of this mid-year book freakout tag. I hope you enjoyed learning about my reading year, the best and worst books that I've read, the biggest disappointments, and all of the books in between. I feel like there was a really good variety on this list, and I've read such a broad range of books in 2023, even though it was like a very small amount compared to previous years. But regardless, I'm really, really excited about my reading progress and for my reading progress for the rest of the year, because I think I'm in a much better point right now in life and just, you know, everything that I've been going through, that I'm better equipped to read a lot more in the coming months. So I'm excited to do that and just bring you guys along for all the content that will come with it. As always, if you guys have read any of the books that I talked about today, let me know what you thought of them as well. And I would love to hear from you, you know, what your answers would be for the mid-year book freakout tag. Leave it down below. I'm so curious to hear like what everyone's best and worst books were, and you know, what books disappointed you or which ones you're excited to pick up. Leave that all down below because I will probably be grabbing some recommendations from those comments. Hint, hint, wink, wink. So I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you want to get regular updates on what I'm doing and what I'm reading, then go check out my Instagram and TikTok and other social media, and I will see you in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!